The principal looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You don't belong here." I was top of my class and he didn't even know my name. You ever feel like your whole world is about to flip and you can't even tell which direction is up anymore? That's what it felt like standing in his office, staring at the plaque on his desk that said, "Excellence, Discipline, Integrity." I wanted to scream. Not because I was angry, though God knows I was, but because I knew exactly what was happening. And I also knew no one would believe me. I'm Aaliyah Simmons, 17, senior at Brighton High School, Bronx, and apparently I don't belong here. It's crazy because I've walked these halls every single day for the past 4 years, head down, books up, GPA steady climbing like a rocket. While other kids were worrying about prom dates and social media likes, I was up at 3 a.m. grinding calculus problems with Khan Academy, whispering through my headphones. I memorized the Supreme Court cases for debate before I even had a partner to compete with. I studied during lunch. I read legal articles during detention. Not because I was ever in it, but because that's where it was quiet. I wasn't just trying to graduate, I was trying to escape. See, my mom works nights as an ER nurse at Lincoln Hospital. Double shifts, doesn't even blink. She comes home smelling like antiseptic and sadness, hands swollen from hours of IVs, blood draws, and paperwork. My little brother? He's 8, sweet as can be, but he's got this cough that just won't quit. Every month we pray we don't lose power. Every week we pray rent doesn't go up. Every day we pray we don't get a knock on the door. So yeah, school was supposed to be my safe place, my ticket out, my promise. But that morning it all changed. It started small, like it always does. I got to school early, like always, and headed straight to the library to study before class. That's when I saw Principal Hargrove standing near the main office with two of the security guards. I didn't think anything of it. Why would I? I didn't do anything. But then, one of the guards looked at me and whispered something to the other. They both looked back at me, then turned away. I felt it in my chest. A slow twist, like someone had tied my stomach in a knot. I brushed it off. Went to my AP government class, took notes like always, answered 3 questions no one else could. Miss Bennett, my teacher, smiled. She always did. She knew I was going places. Second period came and went. I didn't eat lunch. I had a mock trial coming up and needed to prep. I was sitting at the back of the library flipping through notes when my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I ignored it. Buzz. Again. And again. Then the PA system clicked on. "Aaliyah Simmons, please report to the principal's office immediately." Everyone turned to look at me. Even the librarian. I froze. Heart pounding, hands shaking. I didn't know what was going on, but something in the way they said my name, it felt wrong. Like a sentence being passed down. I packed up my stuff slowly, made my way down the hallway, each step heavier than the last. The secretary wouldn't look at me when I arrived. She just pointed to the door. I knocked. "Come in." He was sitting there, suit pressed, tie straight, pen clicking against a thick manila folder. He didn't look up when I walked in. Didn't ask me to sit. Just said, "You're being suspended for behavioral misconduct." I blinked. "What?" "You were involved in an altercation in the hallway yesterday." "No, I wasn't," I said, barely above a whisper. "We have witnesses." "That's impossible," I said louder this time. "I was in study hall. Ask Mr. Phillips." He finally looked up, cold eyes, empty. "Your attitude isn't helping." I nearly choked. "I didn't do anything." Security footage was reviewed. He continued. "You were seen pushing another student against the lockers." I shook my head so hard I felt dizzy. "That's not true. There must be a mistake." But he was already writing something. A note, a form. I wanted to scream, to tear up that office. But I stood still. Because I knew if I so much as raised my voice, I'd be confirming everything they already believed. And what was that? That I was angry, that I was loud, that I was aggressive, that I was just another black girl with an attitude. I was dismissed, just like that. No hearing, no chance to explain, no parent called. I stood in the hallway outside the office, staring down at the suspension slip like it was a death certificate. 3 days out of school, effective immediately. I walked home in the rain that afternoon. No umbrella, just my bag and my pride soaked through. My mom wasn't home yet. I sat on the couch in silence, holding that piece of paper, wondering how everything could fall apart so fast. I didn't even cry. I was too stunned. I didn't know what hurt more. that I was falsely accused, or that no one even cared enough to ask if it was true. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Jasmine, a girl in my class. It said, "Heard what happened. They're saying you got into it with that new girl. Is that true?" I didn't reply. Another message from another classmate. "Girl, you good. Saw the video. Looks fake af." Video? I jumped up, heart racing, opened Instagram, and there it was. A blurry clip of a girl in a dark hoodie shoving someone in the hallway. It was grainy. Bad lighting. You couldn't even see a face. Just the back of a head. But the comments? "That's Aaliyah? Damn," she snapped. I knew she was shady, always too quiet. I wanted to throw my phone against the wall. It wasn't me. The girl wasn't even my height, but they didn't care. They never did. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up replaying every moment, every second of the last week. Who could have done this? Why? Was it just random? Was someone trying to set me up? And more importantly, why now? The next morning, I wasn't allowed back in school. I watched from across the street as students filed in, laughing, chatting, completely unaware that the world as I knew it was burning to the ground. I saw Principal Hargrove through his office window, talking, laughing, like he hadn't just demolished a life. I stood there for an hour, hoping someone, anyone, would come out, would wave me over, would say, "Hey, we figured it out. Come back." But no one did. By the third day of suspension, the video had spread to TikTok. Someone edited it with dramatic music and captions. "Straight A student turns savage." Tens of thousands of views. They didn't know my name, they didn't know my story, but they ate it up. I felt like I was watching myself vanish. It was like I never existed. Not the honor roll plaques, not the mathlete trophies, not the volunteer work, not the hundreds of hours I'd put in. Gone. Replaced by a girl in a blurry video. By day 4, I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. Because if no one was going to fight for me, then I'd do it myself. The first thing I did when I got back to school wasn't go to class. I went to the library, not because I wanted to study, but because I needed the footage. The real footage. The school had dozens of cameras. Hallways, stairwells, cafeteria, even outside by the parking lot. If they said they had proof, I needed to see it. I needed to know what lie they were clinging to. But when I asked the librarian if I could speak to the tech staff, she looked at me with this blank expression and said, "I'm sorry, that's not something students have access to." I expected that. What I didn't expect was the way she glanced around before adding, "You should probably leave before someone sees you in here." Like I was contagious. I walked out, slowly, trying to keep my shoulders from shaking. I made it 2 steps before someone brushed past me and whispered, "They're watching you." I turned. No one was there. But the word stayed. "They're watching you." By lunchtime, I could feel it. The way teachers paused mid-sentence when I walked into class. The way classmates quieted down when I passed their table. Even Jasmine, who had always been cool with me, just nodded from a distance. No smile. I'd been marked, labeled, branded, but for what? I hadn't even been told who the girl in the video was. No names, no witnesses, no hearing. Just a sentence. I tried talking to Mr. Phillips after class. He ran my study hall. He could vouch for me. But when I approached him, he barely made eye contact. "I'm sorry, Aaliyah. Administration asked us not to get involved." What does that even mean? He didn't answer. Just turned back to his papers. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I went to the bathroom, locked the stall, and sat there for 30 minutes with my fists clenched, counting the seconds in my head just to stay sane. I knew what this was. This wasn't about a fight. This wasn't about rules. This was about control. About putting someone like me back in my place. Because someone like me, quiet, smart, black, and unapologetically excellent, makes people uncomfortable. And now they were watching me, waiting for me to slip, to snap, to confirm the narrative they had already decided was true. So I didn't. I started documenting everything. Every class I went to, every conversation, every look. I wrote down times, names, locations. I recorded audio on my phone. Discreetly. In my pocket, under the table. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Because it was clear that my word alone would never be enough. And then things got worse. I started getting called out in class. In AP English, I made a comment about Toni Morrison's use of metaphors in Beloved, and the teacher, Miss Carter, cut me off. "Let's not derail the discussion," she said sharply. "This isn't debate club." My cheeks burned. The class went quiet. I didn't say another word, In chemistry, my lab partner was reassigned, without warning. I asked Mr. Nunes why and he just shrugged. Administration orders. At lunch, someone had scribbled something on my locker in red Sharpie. Fake smart. I wiped it off before anyone could see. Or maybe I just didn't want to see who already had. Even the janitor stopped nodding at me when I passed. Everywhere I went, it felt like I was walking through fog. Like the walls of the school were folding in, pushing me out. But I wasn't giving up. That night, I searched for the school's surveillance policy online. Found a tiny, barely updated page with a list of regulations. Buried at the bottom, it mentioned that students had the right to review any footage related to disciplinary action under the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. FERPA. I printed it out, highlighted the clause, took it to the assistant principal the next morning. She looked uncomfortable, like I'd caught her off guard. This isn't something we typically... It's my right, I said, holding eye contact. She blinked, then nodded. I'll submit the request. It might take a few days. I'll wait. I left her office and went straight to class, heart pounding. A few days, that was all I needed. I just had to survive. But the school had other plans. The next day, they changed my seat in every class. Instead of sitting near the front where I could focus, I was now in the back. Every single room. No explanation. The following day, I was called out of third period for a random locker search. They made me empty my entire bag in front of 2 security guards and a guidance counselor. They found nothing, of course, because there was nothing to find. But that wasn't the point. The point was humiliation. Control. I overheard 2 girls whispering near the vending machines. She's probably got anger issues. She always looked too perfect. I wanted to tell them I wasn't perfect. That I stayed up till 2 a.m. some nights crying into textbooks because I couldn't concentrate over the sounds of gunshots outside. That my mom hadn't had a full night's sleep in 3 years. That I once walked my little brother to school with a fever because we couldn't afford to miss another day. But none of that mattered to them, because someone had decided I was guilty, and everyone else had followed. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I was already fighting a war long before any of this started, and I wasn't about to lose now. The night before the footage was supposed to be ready, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the fire escape outside our apartment, looking out over the city lights, wondering what my life would have looked like if I'd been born somewhere else. Someplace quieter, easier. Then my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. You weren't in that video, I know who was. I stared at it for a long time. Heart hammering. Then it buzzed again. But if you say anything, they'll come after you harder. Be careful. I didn't recognize the number. Tried calling back. Straight to voicemail. I showed the message to my mom. She read it twice. Then looked at me. Her eyes tired but blazing with that same fire she's always carried. You want me to pull you out of that school? She asked. I shook my head. No, I said. I want them to see me. I want them to remember who I am. She nodded. And that night, for the first time in a week, I slept because the tide was shifting. And I could feel it coming. I walked into the principal's office at exactly 9:05 a.m. The document in my hand trembling slightly, even though I willed it to be still. The assistant principal had called me in that morning, saying the surveillance footage I requested was available for limited review, which, in their terms, meant they were letting me watch it. But only on their terms, in their space, and without a copy. I didn't care. I just wanted the truth. Principal Hargrove sat behind his desk, arms crossed, lips pursed, like he was doing me a favor. The TV monitor was already on, a black screen with the timestamp blinking in the corner. Miss Ramirez, the assistant principal, was seated beside him, trying to appear neutral. But I saw it, that flicker of doubt in her eyes. The footage started. A hallway. Grainy. Kids walking between classes. I leaned forward, eyes searching for anything that could prove what I already knew. And then there it was, a girl in a dark hoodie shoving another student. But that's not me, I said instantly. The girl was taller. She had long hair down to her waist. I wear mine in braids. And her walk, her gait, it was different. Angled, limping slightly on the left. I walk straight, balanced, always have. You can't even see her face. I added, pointing to the moment where the hoodie covered half her profile. Principal Hargrove didn't say a word. He just hit pause, then turned off the monitor. That's the footage administration used to make its decision, he said flatly. You mean the footage you used to accuse me without evidence? I replied. His jaw tightened. I want this on record, I said. You have zero visual confirmation that it was me. This isn't proof, it's projection. You need to watch your tone, Miss Simmons. Bossy tournaments. That's when I lost it. Just enough to make them uncomfortable, but not enough to make me the stereotype. No, what I need is for someone in this school to stop trying to destroy the one thing I've worked for my entire life. His expression changed then, just for a second, because I said it out loud. Destroy. Because that's what this was, a quiet, calculated erasure. And now it was out in the open. When I left that office, I didn't go back to class. I went to the guidance department. If the administration wouldn't listen, maybe the guidance counselor would. Mr. Rayburn was new, young. He'd only been at Brighton High for a year, but he had that look, like he still believed he could fix things. I sat down in his office and laid everything out. The video, the seat changes, the locker search, the anonymous text. He listened, took notes. When I was done, he leaned forward and said, "Have you considered filing a formal grievance with the district?" "No one's going to believe me," I said. "They will if you have documentation," he said, glancing at the folder in my hands. "And you do." That was the first real moment of hope I'd had in weeks. I spent the next 2 days putting together a report, screenshots of messages, a transcript of the video's timeline frame by frame, a written statement of my whereabouts during the alleged altercation signed by 2 students from study hall who finally agreed to back me up after much hesitation and whispers that they might get in trouble too. I printed copies, bound them, and then I filed the grievance. But I didn't stop there. Because that same afternoon, during last period, they escalated. They pulled me out of class and walked me to the main office. 2 security guards flanking me like I was a criminal. In front of everyone, I heard it. The silence, the whispers. "Yo, what did she do now? She willed in again?" No one asked if it was true. No one cared. They just watched as I was marched down the hallway like a warning. Principal Hargrove stood behind the glass when I walked in. There was a woman sitting at the conference table, black suit, glasses, tablet in hand. District representative. Her name was Miss Garland. "I'm here to conduct a follow-up on the grievance you submitted," she said, without preamble. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. She turned to the principal. "You're alleging misconduct in identification and punishment without sufficient cause?" I opened my folder, pulled out a copy of the timeline and handed it over. She skimmed it, then glanced at Hargrove. "Do you have any additional video or documentation beyond what was presented to Miss Simmons?" He hesitated, a beat too long. "No." Miss Garland set down her tablet, her face unreadable. "I'll be following up with the superintendent," she said. "In the meantime, I'm recommending that any disciplinary record be temporarily lifted pending review." I felt my knees weaken. Temporarily lifted wasn't the same as cleared, but it was something. I walked out of that room with my head high. But the war was far from over, because the moment word got out that I'd challenged the administration, it all turned again. Some students started calling me lawyer girl in the hallways. Some laughed, others sneered. Someone slipped a note into my locker the next day. "Just drop out, you don't belong here." Same words, different ink. But it wasn't going to stop me. Not now, because I was about to turn the entire school upside down. And they weren't ready for what I had planned. They started calling me the girl who thinks she's better than the rules. It was whispered in stairwells, scrawled on the edge of desks, mumbled, as I passed by groups of students who never spoke to me before, but somehow had opinions now. My locker was moved to the far end of the second floor, in a hallway no one ever walked through. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like static in my ears every time I opened it. I wasn't just being watched anymore. I was being isolated. Deliberately. The principal had stopped speaking to me directly. Anything he wanted to say came through intermediaries. Hall monitors, substitute admins, even teachers. My schedule changed again, with 3 of my AP classes transferred into general ed sections. No warning, no explanation. When I went to the guidance office to object, Mr. Rayburn wasn't there. "He's been reassigned," said the secretary, without meeting my eyes. My voice cracked. "Reassigned where?" She just shrugged. "Central office? That's all I know." I didn't believe her. I started seeing the pattern. One by one, the people who tried to help me started disappearing. The librarian I confided in, gone on leave. Miss Bennett, my English teacher, suddenly unavailable for comment. Even Jasmine had stopped texting back. She wouldn't meet my eyes anymore in the cafeteria. It was like they were pulling me out of the system thread by thread, hoping no one would notice before I vanished entirely. But I noticed, and I wrote it all down. Every move they made, every subtle shift. Then came the behavioral monitoring plan. I found out about it on a Tuesday morning when I was summoned to the counselor's office. Only it wasn't a counselor who met me. It was Mr. Jennings, a man I'd never seen before with a clipboard and a too tight smile. "We've been asked to put together a support structure," he said. I blinked. "Support for what? Your recent behavioral instability?" he said casually, like we were talking about cafeteria seating. "The school believes it would benefit you to have a daily check-in, some accountability steps. Nothing invasive. Just a little oversight." He slid a paper across the desk. I didn't touch it. It had boxes to check off, attended all classes, spoke respectfully, avoided escalation. Each day had a point value, like a game. Below it, a clause. Failure to comply with this plan may result in permanent academic re-evaluation or expulsion. My throat went dry. I looked up at him. "So this is it then? Either I behave the way you want or I lose everything." "I wouldn't phrase it that way," he said, still smiling. "But yes, I didn't sign it. Instead, I stood and walked out of the room. And no one stopped me. They wanted me to break. That's what all of this was. They couldn't prove I was guilty. But they could wear me down, isolate me, crush me under so many layers of subtle control that I'd eventually crack. They wanted me to yell, to scream, to curse someone out and make their version of me real. I refused. But refusing came with a cost. By the end of the week, my name was quietly removed from the scholarship nominee list. A list I'd been on since junior year. When I asked the vice principal why, he said, "Administrative discretion." That night, I cried for the first time in weeks. Not the quiet tears of confusion and frustration I'd felt before, but the heaving kind that shake your chest and make your skin feel like it's burning from the inside out. I had done everything right, and they were still taking everything from me. But then something changed. On Friday afternoon, I got a message from an anonymous Instagram account. "You're not the only one, they've done this too." I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, "Who are you?" No answer. Just another message. "Check your locker. Bottom shelf, Friday. After school." I hesitated. It could have been a joke. Or a trap. But at this point, what did I have left to lose? I waited until the halls were nearly empty before heading to the second floor. My footsteps echoed against the floor as I approached my locker. I kept glancing over my shoulder. Bottom shelf, right corner. Taped underneath was a thin manila envelope. Inside were printouts, photos, emails. One of them was a scanned suspension letter. Same wording as mine, same handwriting. Different name. Another was a memo from Principal Hargrove to the school board listing problem students with vague references to attitude, non-compliance, and academic inflation. Next to my name was the word watch. I felt like I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just me. There were others. Other students who had been buried, erased, their records scrubbed clean of excellence and replaced with silence. I flipped to the last page. It was a list, handwritten. 5 names, mine included. And next to one of them, graduated despite intervention. Despite, like it was a failure on their part. I stayed up all night scanning every page, creating a backup on my cloud drive, organizing it in case I needed to send it anywhere. And that's when the idea hit me. If the school was going to try to erase me, I'd make myself visible, unignorable. Not just through complaints and paperwork, but by showing the truth. Loud, public. I started building a case, a digital one, anonymous testimonies from other students who had vanished mysteriously. Screenshots from emails, timestamps from footage, records of when counselors disappeared or were reassigned. I built a folder titled Operation Truth, and I sent it to one person, Ms. Garland, the district rep, with one line attached. "If you're still watching, it's time you really looked." Then I waited, because the storm was coming, and I wasn't scared of it anymore. The following Monday started like any other. Grey skies, a cold wind sweeping through the Bronx, and the sound of traffic snarling just outside Brighton High's rusted gates. But there was a buzz in the air. Subtle, uneasy. The kind of shift you feel before lightning strikes. I could see it in the way the front security guard glanced up a second too long as I walked through the metal detectors. I could feel it in the way the secretary stiffened when I signed my name on the attendance sheet. They knew something was coming. They just didn't know what. I kept my head down until third period, then skipped class altogether. Not because I was hiding, because I had a meeting. When I entered room 217, normally used for substitute teachers, Miss Garland was already there, waiting. But she wasn't alone. 2 people stood behind her. One was from the district legal office. The other, a man with a press badge clipped to his chest. Media. She looked at me, expression unreadable. "I reviewed your files," she said, holding up the thick folder I'd sent. "And what I found demands escalation. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to, because she already knew. The school had created an internal system of targeting, disguised behind policies like character review and behavioral oversight. Students, especially students of color with high academic standing, had been flagged as inflated risks and removed from advanced programs through manipulation of discipline records. It wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. We are opening a full investigation, Ms. Garland continued, effective immediately. But she wasn't done. There's a school board meeting scheduled tonight, she said. I'm inviting you to attend, to speak. My stomach flipped. Publicly? Before the board? Before Hargrove? I nodded. That night, I stood outside the board meeting building on East 145th Street, clutching my notes, heart thudding in my chest like a war drum. Reporters were everywhere. Students, parents, even some of the teachers who'd gone silent in the past few weeks stood among the crowd. Faces tight, eyes wide. Miss Garland motioned me inside. The boardroom was packed. Cameras clicked. My name was called. I stepped forward. At first, I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. My palms too slick. But then I saw my mother, sitting in the back row, hands folded in her lap, her eyes locked on mine. And suddenly I found my voice. My name is Aaliyah Simmons. I'm a senior at Brighton High. I've maintained a 4.7 GPA, served as president of the debate team, and have been on track for a full academic scholarship since junior year. But despite all that, I was suspended, without evidence, for a fight I didn't commit. My academic standing was challenged. My character was questioned. And when I fought back, I was isolated, monitored, and stripped of opportunities I had earned. I paused. I've been called arrogant, difficult, aggressive, all because I refused to stay quiet while being erased. I held up the printed file. This isn't just my story, this is the story of at least 5 other students, maybe more. The evidence is here, and I'm asking, no, demanding, that someone finally see us, hear us. Silence, then whispers, then murmurs of agreement. A man in a dark suit at the end of the panel leaned forward. Miss Simmons, are you saying the administration falsified records? I'm saying they weaponized them. Gasps echoed through the room. Someone tried to cut my mic, but Miss Garland spoke up. Let her finish. I turned to the crowd. My hands were still trembling, but my voice was firm. I've worked too hard to be reduced to a blurry video and a whispered rumor. And I'm not the only one. I didn't remember walking off stage. I just remember the applause and the look on Principal Hargrove's face when the board ordered him to remain after the session for a private review. It wasn't rage, it was fear, real fear. But that wasn't the twist. The twist came the next morning. A bulletin went out to the entire school via email, marked urgent and official. It was a correction notice, a retraction. The administration acknowledges procedural failures in the suspension and academic review of student Aaliyah Simmons. Effective immediately, all disciplinary actions are voided and her academic records are reinstated. But below that was something else. A single sentence that hit harder than anything they could have written. Per updated evaluations, Aaliyah Simmons currently holds the highest GPA in Brighton High history, 4.71. That number spread like wildfire. Group chats, hallways, even the teacher's lounge. No one could ignore it. Not anymore. I wasn't the rumor. I wasn't the fight. I wasn't the file they tried to bury. I was the record breaker. And every single person who had ever doubted me had to say my name out loud now. Aaliyah Simmons, highest GPA in Brighton High's history. And I wasn't done yet. The moment the announcement went out, everything shifted. Like flipping a light switch in a room full of people pretending they were blind. That morning, as I walked through the main entrance of Brighton High, heads turned. Not in judgment this time, not in suspicion or quiet disdain, but in stunned, hushed awe. Even the security guard, the one who once flanked me like a prison escort, gave me a slight nod. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. Students I'd never spoken to suddenly wanted to walk with me to class. Teachers who'd avoided my eye were now offering forced smiles and, "You doing okay?" Like I hadn't just been through psychological warfare under their noses. I didn't trust it, not for a second, because none of them stood up when I was being crushed. And now that I stood taller than ever, they wanted to act like they'd always been in my corner. But I wasn't here for their guilt. I was here for closure. Principal Hargrove had gone silent. No announcements, no public statements. Just a locked office and whispers of an indefinite leave pending an internal review. There were rumors the district had found more evidence. Documents he'd tried to scrub, internal memos with discriminatory language, red flag student reports altered after submission. He was disappearing the same way he tried to make me disappear. But unlike me, no one was fighting for him. The district released an official letter to families that Friday. Following a comprehensive investigation, Brighton High School's administrative protocols are under full review. New leadership will be installed pending the results of the ongoing inquiry. They never mentioned his name. They never had to. Everyone knew. By Monday, the board had appointed an interim principal, Dr. Janet Price, a black woman from the East Side, known for cleaning up schools with histories of misconduct. The way she walked through those halls, heels clicking, eyes sharp, posture unshakable, told me everything I needed to know. She was here for blood and justice. On her first day, she called me into her office. It wasn't like before. No clipboard, no smug smile, just her and me, and a quiet so thick I could hear the distant hum of the old HVAC system overhead. "I read your file," she said. I stiffened. "Not the one they doctored," she added. "The real one. The one you wrote with every test score, every essay, every sleepless night." My throat caught. She leaned forward. "What they did to you should never happen to any student. But you didn't just survive it. You exposed it. That takes strength, brilliance, fire." I didn't respond. My voice was stuck behind the storm still settling inside me. So she continued. "I'd like to recommend you for the district-wide Scholar Justice Fellowship. It's awarded to students who show extraordinary academic performance and civic impact. And Aaliyah," she smiled, slow and sure, "you've earned it." It wasn't just a scholarship. It was a platform, an acknowledgement, an undoing. For once, I walked out of the principal's office not because I was forced to, but because I was chosen. I should have felt victorious, but I didn't. Not yet. Because victory doesn't come from a title or a plaque or a public statement. It comes from healing what was broken. And I wasn't the only one they broke, so I started something new, a student-led coalition called the Watchlist Project. Our goal was simple: transparency. We demanded visibility into disciplinary procedures, the right to access our own records, and a system to anonymously report patterns of discrimination, backed with legal resources and board-level oversight. At first, people said it was too ambitious, that I was stirring the pot. But then 3 students came forward, then 5, then 17, each one with stories like mine. Records altered, voices silenced, dreams nearly dismantled by a system designed to protect everyone but us. And suddenly the pot wasn't stirring, it was boiling. The district couldn't ignore us anymore. They agreed to meet with our coalition once a month. They installed anonymous reporting portals. They mandated implicit bias training for all administrative staff. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. One day I passed the same hallway where the incident supposedly happened, where the blurry video of someone not me was filmed. There was a new poster on the wall now. It had my picture, my name, Brighton's highest GPA, 4.71, resilient, unbreakable. But it wasn't the numbers I stared at. It was the caption below. A quote they pulled from my board speech. "I'm not a problem to fix, I'm a future to protect." And that's when I knew. This wasn't just about me anymore. Graduation day came with sun. Not just literal sunlight, though the sky above the Bronx was a rare, brilliant blue that morning, but the kind of internal light that breaks through after a storm you thought would never end. I stood in line behind dozens of students in navy blue gowns, the tassel from my cap brushing my cheek in the breeze, and I felt it for the first time. Not fear, not pressure, not rage. Freedom. My name was called last. Not because I was forgotten, but because the board had chosen to honor me with the final diploma, reserved for the graduate with the highest GPA. Something that had never been awarded to a black girl in the school's 92-year history. I walked across that stage not just for myself, but for everyone they tried to bury. My mother was front row, standing before my name even finished echoing across the speaker system. She was crying and clapping and laughing at the same time, hands trembling like she was afraid she'd wake up and it would all be gone. But I wasn't dreaming. I stood there, holding that diploma, and I looked out at the crowd. Not just students and faculty, but families, reporters, and members of the district office. My voice wasn't shaking when I took the mic. "I'm not going to tell you a fairy tale," I said, eyes scanning the sea of faces. "Because what happened here was not magic. It was hard, it was painful, it was unfair, but it was real. And that matters." The air was still. You don't rise because someone hands you a ladder. You rise because you keep climbing. Even when they grease the rungs, move the top, or try to burn it down. You rise when you refuse to disappear. Applause started slow, then it erupted. Loud, raw, real. I stepped back, tears finally falling. The kind that taste like both relief and revenge. After the ceremony, I was swarmed by teachers I never thought would speak to me again, students I'd never met, even parents who whispered thank you, as if I had given their children permission to dream a little louder. One of them, a little girl no older than 10, walked up and handed me a hand drawn card. On it, a figure in a cap and gown with a crown on her head. She'd written, "I want to be strong like you." I knelt down, took her hand, and said, "You already are." But this wasn't the end, it was the beginning. College was next, a pre law track. Scholarships had flooded in once the media caught wind of my GPA story and the systemic injustice I exposed. Stanford, Columbia, Harvard, all knocking. But I chose to stay close. I chose NYU because the fight wasn't over. I wanted to stay near the Bronx, near Brighton, near the kids walking those same hallways who still didn't know their worth, who were still afraid to speak, to challenge, to shine. And that's why I'm telling this story. Not for attention, not for pity, but for truth. Because somewhere, right now, there's another Aliyah. Maybe in a different city, maybe in a different skin, maybe being silenced for being too bold, too bright, too brilliant. And I want her to know, you are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not the problem. You are the light. So if this story moved you, if it made you feel seen, heard, validated, then share it. Comment, like, subscribe. Let your voice join mine. Because silence is the system's favorite weapon. But when we speak, loud, united, unapologetic, we become a force they can never erase.